Hi, this is Sean from Centric Wealth Advisory. This is a video where I'd like to go through a few budget planners that I've created for anyone wanting to have a better way of overseeing their income and expenses on a monthly basis and also over a yearly basis. And more importantly, keeping track of your rolling balance from month to month. The idea behind this template is to help you have a better understanding of where your money is going with regard to expenses and also how much you're saving on a monthly basis towards your retirement, towards emergency funds, etc. And the only way to really monitor what is going on in your bank account is to actually record the information on a monthly basis and then have a budget. You need to have a budget, income, and expense so that you kind of have an idea of what income you're expecting to be earning per month. If it's a salary, obviously it's going to be the same every single month. And if it's a commission, then you need to sort of get an average. And the reason why this is important is because when you start setting budgets and you start incurring your expenses, you need to see if you're over or under your budget so that when you're looking at your monthly and annual income and expenses, are you within your budget or are you going into overdraft or using credit facilities because you are spending far more than what you are actually earning? And that's the whole point of a budget. Now, I'm going to do a quick share screen with you now. This is a template that I've created for a single person. It can really be used by couples if you really want to. I have made one for married couples. It is slightly different to this. This particular template is preset from January through to December. There is a tab here which explains how this template works in terms of what you need to do. You can choose the year in which you want to track. You can make a copy of this template and then obviously save a income expense budget every single year. In this case, you can go and you can choose between 2024 up to 2040. And we leave it on 2024, and that will then pull through into each of the months. So, of course, obviously, if you make it 2025, all of this will update. And what happens is you complete the income and expenses for the budget, and then, of course, an actual. As your months go by, then you should take your bank statements and then you should start putting down the actual expenses that you're incurring. And the reason for this is because you might have changes in your, let's say, bond installment because you've got a lower or high interest because of the repo rate, as an example. You might have an increase in a life policy premium. You might have an increase in insurance for your vehicle. You need to be able to monitor that so that you can keep track of your income and expenses. Going back to what I said earlier, living beyond your means is when you're not keeping track of your expenses and they increase every single month, but your income stays the same. So the whole point behind this exercise is to start to train you to become a bit more responsible with how you spend your money. So what you essentially do is you will complete the budget for January to December for whatever amounts you want in here. Then you put the actual. So let's just go and say, for example, you've got 50,000 budgeted, and let's say you made 51. You could say 51 because you maybe had a salary increase, then you would have essentially a surplus. So whatever you complete in the months, it will then pull through into the year. Obviously, just bear in mind, I've only done 1 month. So if I were to go and do another month, it will then pull through all the months collectively, and it'll do that for your income and expenses. Then we could look at it monthly. This is the tab that you're going to spend the most time on monitoring your basically your expenses. So I have all your budgeted income. I have your actual net income over here, which is basically pulling through from each of the months. Then you can see whether you're over or under. In this case, you're under budget. And the reason for that is because you've got a higher net income. Now, obviously, when you start adding expenses, it's going to do the calculation for you. And when you start filling in the months, you'll be able to actually do a comparison between the months to see which one, how you're performing in certain periods. So if you want to measure, like say January and December, you can then see here how it looks in terms of the over and under expenditure. Was a ranking over here. So this will calculate ranking from first to last, or 1 to 12, based on the performance of the months. You want to see which months have I had under the budget, which months have I had over the budget, and then you can actually see here how you are doing. Because in some cases, you might go over budget in December because it's Christmas, and also you get paid your salary generally earlier in that month, and then you then have a longer period before you get paid again in January. So you're most likely going to go into overdraft. If you've got a correct budget and you've got a surplus that is carried through, which you can track on a rolling balance, the rolling balance will pull through all the incomes from each of the months, plus it will carry over any surplus. So if I were to go into, say, over here, and I were to go and put in, let's say, 50,051 again, what it will do is it'll pull through the months that you have incurred in income, and whatever the expenses were for that month. If there's a surplus, that surplus will carry through into the next month. If there's a loss, then the loss will obviously have to be made up by the following month, because essentially you need to, let's say, for example, pay back that credit facility that you've used in the previous month, as an example. All the columns show you can resize. There's access to do that, but everything else is locked, so you don't accidentally delete formulas. But the main thing here is you want to measure your performance in terms of how you were doing. And you can see a breakdown of your expenses over here. So you can see what how your months looked, what your expenses were. So there's everyday expenses, lifestyle expenses, and contractual expenses. And what's nice is you can actually edit any one of these fields. If you don't want to have this under education, if you want to call it something else, if you want to call your services something else, if you want to call your insurance something else, you're more than welcome to do so. Whatever you change over here, let's say it is fuel, then it'll pull through into all the months over there, and it'll pull through automatically. So you know that when you are tracking that particular line entry, it'll be across the 12 months, so you don't put it in the wrong place. And the whole exercise again is to start better understanding how your money is being spent. Where has it been allocated? So if you've got a large amount going into clothing, is there quite a high amount going into insurance? You might want to renew your insurance and see if there's a better way to bring down your premiums. Are you overspending on water, or was it a high amount on water? Are there high bank fees, or whatever the case is? These are sort of things that you can start tracking, and then you can start putting in place measures to try and potentially bring it down. Healthcare, if you've got a lot of issues with healthcare here, keep track of that as well, because if you belong to a medical scheme, there are generally deductions that you can claim for medical aid costs that were not covered by the scheme. And the big one here, of course, is obviously food. Are you spending too much money on groceries? Can you cut down on that on a monthly basis? And by doing that, it's going to then reflect in the rolling balance, because obviously you'd want to have a surplus. And if you continue to do that, let's say, for example, you cut down on groceries of 2,000 a month by not buying a certain retailer's products. Let's say it is a more expensive retailer versus another, and they sell the same thing. Maybe go to the cheaper one, save on that, and that will then reflect on your monthly and annual tracker. And of course, obviously, you must do this on a monthly basis in terms of putting in your actual income and expenses. And the reason why you would do that is because then you can start to get a better idea where your money is going. Obviously, there might be months where you don't have, let's say for a dentist, others you do. But the point is that if you are rolling over with a surplus, in other words, money that is sitting in your account going into the next month before you get paid again, then you can put that money aside maybe into your savings portion of your bank account. That can earn a bit of interest, and that can be used for, let's say, a car service. That can be used for medical emergencies. That can be used for unforeseen expenses like a dental visit, which you don't want to go into credit facilities or access unnecessary savings if you've got a budget in place. So this is the first template that I'm now making available. And then one last section here is you can make notes. You can put any notes you want. This entire section is available for you to make some comments. I've just given you some prompts here as an example. So an example here, you've got expected month for short-term premium increases, life policy increases, rental increases. Let's say you're renting your property. When is your lease renewal expected to increase? Expected month for debt to be settled. Let's say you've got a credit facility with a bank and you're planning to pay it off in a number of months. In that year that you're tracking, you can then go to that particular month and say, let's say, for example, in September, I expect to pay my credit card off and not have that additional expense. So then in October, you will then have freed up money that you should be able to distribute elsewhere. Anything you want to make in the section in that particular year, or just comments for yourself, just to come back and have a look, that's where this note section is applicable. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share the other two templates very quickly because I've given you an overview of how this works. The other templates are pretty much exactly the same. The difference is I've added one extra field under the married couple template, and that is to allocate husband, wife, or both. I'm going to show you quickly on that. And then lastly, there's a dynamic date where you can put in your own start date, and then it'll track that month that you've inserted. Let's say you've put in June, and then it'll go July, August, September, October, November, and it'll go into the next year. So it'll track the rolling 12 months. So let me first pull up the one with the married couple, then I'll show the last one, which is the dynamic dates. And that's also applicable to a single person. The reason for that is because generally speaking, couples will track from January to December because they're going to take all their income, all their expenses, who pays what percentage is going where, and then you have a better idea of household income, where's the expenses being derived from, so that you can make decisions together as a couple to maybe create more savings by putting pooling money together, I should say, to put towards expenses, just to alleviate, because obviously husband and wife might be earning different salaries, and that needs to be reflecting on their joint budget. So let me bring up the template that I mentioned now with the married couple, and then I'm going to do the dynamic dates, which is just allowing you to put in whatever date you want. Right, so this is the template that I've created for married couple. Only real difference here is that on the yearly tracker, there is a drop-down option to choose husband, wife, or both. And the reason for this is because then you can start to track. Let's say, for example, if you want to put husband, wife, separate line entries for salaries, you're absolutely welcome to do that. Both just means that, let's say, there's a split of 50-50 towards the bond, and both husband and wife are paying from their own bank accounts, then you can just say both. And what happens is that it will pull through into the section over here. And wherever it says both under everyday expenses, under lifestyle expenses, it will then pull through applicably. And then, of course, obviously, husband and wife for everyday expenses, lifestyle expenses, and contractual. And then you have a breakdown of husband, wife, and both. Obviously, it's not going to be both 100%. There should be expenses the husband pays, expenses the wife pays, such as groceries, and the husband might be paying, let's say, school fees or whatever. The point being is that you just have a bit more data that you can use when you are creating a budget. And the reason why it's only going to reflect on the yearly is because we want this to be the same across all the months. We don't want to have January as husband, February as wife, and then March maybe both for the same line entry. It's not going to work out correctly. So I've only made it available on the yearly because generally speaking, on a budget, you husband and wife can sit together before the month of January starts, and they can decide who pays what from each of their own bank accounts. And because they've already put a budget in, you can put the budgeted income and expenses, and then they can keep track of their income and expenses collectively, so that there is better control over these expenses between husband and wife, and obviously if they're paying together. And this just means that there will be additional income that can be allocated towards savings, can be put towards vacations, be towards school, clothing or textbooks or whatever the case is. There's that money available if they plan correctly. And it just simply means that husband and wife are not going to go into any credit facilities or go and take out any unnecessary debt and have to pay interest on that, because that's what happens, unfortunately, with a lot of households, is that husband and wife don't have an idea what each is spending. And as a result, one might go into debt where the other one may be fine, and they're unaware that they could actually supplement one another and obviously pay household expenses together. So that's the second template I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share the last one now, which is the dynamic dates. This one also for husband and wife is up until 2040. You can choose the year and it'll pull through into each of the months respectively. Again, you can make a copy of this template for each year that you track, and then just keep copies for your historic purposes. If you want to open up two budgets at the same time and you can compare your monthly or annual or rolling balances between, let's say, 2024 and 2025, then you can see if you are getting better at budgeting or you're getting worse at budgeting, and then you can have a discussion around that to potentially plan a bit better. So hopefully this tape will add value to those that are looking for a budget for joint purposes. I'm now going to show the last one where you can just change the date to your starting date that you wish. Right, so this is the last template. So there's 3 templates in total, which I'm going to be making available for you to download. You're welcome to use whichever template you feel is best. All of them are pretty much designed exactly the same way. This one is applicable for a single person, or if you want to do 2 separate budgets, entirely up to you. The difference on this one is that instead of having January, February, March, April, May up until December, I've called it month 1 to 12. And the reason for that is because you can put in any start date that you want. Let's say you want to start on the 1st of June. What will happen? It'll take June, July, August, pull through until the next 11 months have been carried through. Because obviously we're tracking 12 months. So it'll start from June to May. And if you want to then do your copy of the budget, then you can start from June 2025 to May 2026 as your second budget that you would do. So everything else is exactly the same as the single person. There's no married couple option drop down, but you just have the ability to change the start date. If you just want to use the template where it's from January to December, it's exactly the same thing. More than welcome to do that. But the point behind this is that someone might want to start their budget in the beginning of a year and track it from June to May the following year. This is just at least allows you to do that. And then on the monthly tracker, as you can see, you will see that the relevant months that you want to track. And just also note, you can adjust the column width just by going over here. I've unlocked the cells or given you editing rights to do that, but this information is protected so you won't accidentally delete any formulas. The only thing you can edit on this is the comparison between the 2 months. Obviously, there's only data for June, and the ranking, everything else is exactly the same. As I said before, the only difference is you will just create your own start date, and that will then pull through into the monthly calendar. And obviously for yearly budgets, it's going to be taking the 12 months anyway. So it's going to pull Month 1 to month 12, exactly the same as the other one where it's just January to December. Only difference is that a person might just want to start budgeting mid-year and not from January. This is the template you're going to use. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I do hope that this template will add value to anyone looking to better understand their finances, have a better understanding of their expenses, make informed decisions regarding their what they're spending their money on, which categories they're allocating the expenses to, and also identifying costs that can be brought down, because you don't need to buy as much clothes, as an example, on a monthly basis, or buying more expensive food or more expensive brands, going to more affordable retailers. All these different things need to be monitored so that you can actually start tracking your expenses on a more accurate basis. And I believe this template, or these 3 templates, will be able to assist you doing that, so that you can become an expert in budgeting your own personal finances, so that you just are in a better position financially. You're not going into debt. You're not having major stress, because now these expenses that you are now forecasting that are going to be occurring, and now you don't have the money for it. That's the worst thing that can happen. If you are planning correctly, then that will never be an issue, because you've got control of your income and expenses beforehand. Thanks again for the time, and hope to create an additional template in the near future. Bye for now. Ciao.